The screech of metal against asphalt pierced the morning silence as Débora pressed the brake pedal with all her strength, but nothing happened. The car continued speeding down the mountain road at 65 miles per hour, heading straight toward a curve that would send them plummeting into a 300-foot ravine. In the back seat, 7-year-old Anna watched her mother's knuckles turn white as she gripped the steering wheel, and without understanding the full gravity of the situation, the little girl did the only thing she knew how to do. She knelt on the seat, closed her eyes, and began to pray. If you're watching this story from anywhere in the world, please subscribe to our channel and let us know in the comments where you're from. Your support means everything to us, and we love connecting with people who believe in the power of faith. It had started as such an ordinary Tuesday morning in the small mountain town of Cedar Falls, Colorado. Débora Martinez, a 34-year-old nurse at the local hospital, was following the same routine she had followed for 3 years: drive Anna to Riverside Elementary School, then head to work for her morning shift. The drive took exactly 23 minutes through winding mountain roads that carved through the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. Their silver Honda Civic was nothing special, but it had been reliable since Débora bought it used from a local dealer. She had saved for months to afford it, working extra shifts at the hospital to make the payments. As a single mother, every dollar mattered, and she couldn't afford to have car troubles. She maintained it carefully, taking it to Miguel's auto shop for regular oil changes and inspections. Anna was particularly excited that morning because her class was rehearsing for the annual Christmas play. She had been chosen to play an angel, and she took the role very seriously. For weeks she had been practicing her lines in front of the bathroom mirror, spreading her arms wide and speaking in what she called her angel voice. She had even convinced her mother to let her wear her white Sunday dress to school so she could practice in costume. "Mommy, do you think real angels have to remember lines?" Anna asked from the back seat, her small hands moving as she practiced her gestures. "Or do they just know what to say because God tells them?" Débora smiled, adjusting the rearview mirror to see her daughter's animated face. "I think they probably just know, sweetheart. Angels are very special that way." Anna nodded seriously. "I wish I could be a real angel sometimes. Then I could help people like they do in the Bible stories." The conversation was interrupted as they approached the steepest section of Mountain View Road. This particular stretch was notorious among locals, earning the nickname Devil's Descent for its sharp grade and dangerous curves. Warning signs dotted the roadside every few hundred yards, reminding drivers to reduce speed and use caution. The county had installed additional guardrails just 2 years earlier, after a family of 4 had died when their truck went through the barrier during an ice storm. Débora had driven this route hundreds of times, but she never took it lightly. She always slowed down well before reaching the steep section, checked her mirrors for following traffic, and kept both hands firmly on the wheel. Today should have been no different. As they began the descent, Débora noticed the car seemed to be picking up speed more quickly than usual. She pressed the brake pedal gently, expecting the familiar resistance and the slight forward lurch as the car slowed. Instead, her foot sank toward the floor with almost no resistance at all. The speedometer continued climbing, 35, 40, 45 miles per hour. A cold wave of panic washed over her as she pressed the brake pedal harder, pumping it repeatedly. Nothing. The pedal went nearly to the floor with each press, offering no stopping power whatsoever. The car continued accelerating down the grade, pulled by gravity and momentum. "Anna, honey, please make sure your seatbelt is tight," Débora said, fighting to keep her voice calm while her mind raced through possible solutions. She reached for the emergency brake lever, only to remember with sick dread that it had been broken for months. She had scheduled an appointment to have it repaired, but kept postponing it because of the cost and her busy work schedule. 50 miles per hour. The trees along the roadside began to blur past the windows. Débora gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles ached, her palms slick with sweat despite the cool October morning. The car felt different at this speed, less stable, more difficult to control. Every small movement of the wheel seemed amplified. She tried shifting the automatic transmission into a lower gear, but the car was already in drive and wouldn't respond to her desperate attempts to force it into park or neutral. The power steering felt heavy and sluggish. The engine roared as they continued picking up speed, the sound echoing off the mountain walls on either side of the road. "Mommy, why are we going so fast?" Anna asked, her voice carrying the first hint of concern. She had stopped practicing her angel lines and was looking out the window at the rapidly passing scenery. "The car is having some problems, baby," Débora replied, her eyes scanning desperately for any possible escape route. To their right, the mountain rose steeply upward, covered with pine trees and jagged rocks. To their left, a guardrail was the only thing between them and a sheer drop into Pine Valley, nearly 300 feet below. There were no side roads, no driveways, no safe places to run off the pavement. 55 miles per hour. Débora could see the first of the major curves ahead, marked by a series of yellow warning signs that advised a maximum speed of 25 miles per hour. The curve was sharp enough that locals called it Dead Man's Turn because of the accidents that had occurred there over the years. At their current speed, with no brakes, there would be no way to navigate it safely. Behind them, she heard the rumble of a large truck that had been following them at a safe distance. The driver was probably wondering why her brake lights weren't coming on as they approached the dangerous section of road. She wondered if he would be the one to call for help after they crashed. If he would be the one to tell the authorities that he had watched a mother and daughter die because their brakes failed. 60 miles per hour. Débora tried honking the horn, hoping to warn any oncoming traffic, but the road ahead appeared empty. It was mid-morning on a Tuesday, past the time when most people were driving to work, but before the lunch hour traffic began. They might not encounter another car until it was too late. The mathematics of their situation were simple and terrifying. At 60 miles per hour, they were traveling 88 feet per second. The curve ahead would require them to turn nearly 90 degrees to the left. Physics demanded that they either slow down dramatically or fly off the road in a straight line, punching through the guardrail and tumbling down the mountainside. "Anna, I need you to listen to me very carefully," Débora said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded, despite the terror coursing through her veins. "We're going to be okay, but I need you to put your head down and hold on tight to your seatbelt." Instead of following her mother's instructions, Anna did something that would change both their lives forever. She unbuckled her seatbelt and knelt on the seat, facing forward toward her mother. Her small hands came together in the prayer position she had learned in Sunday school, fingers interlocked, thumbs pointing upward. "Dear Heavenly Father," Anna began, her 7-year-old voice clear and strong, despite the noise of the racing engine and rushing wind. "Mommy and I need your help right now. Our car won't slow down and Mommy is scared. I know you love us and I know you can do anything. Please help our car stop so we don't get hurt." 65 miles per hour. The speedometer needle quivered as they approached their maximum speed. Through the windshield, Débora could see the yellow diamond-shaped signs that marked the approach to Dead Man's Turn. She had perhaps 45 seconds before they reached the point of no return. Anna continued praying, her voice rising above the noise of their runaway car. "And God, if something happens to us, please take care of Grandma Martinez and make sure she knows we love her. And please tell the angels in heaven that I was trying my best to be like them in the school play." Tears streamed down Debora's face as she listened to her daughter's innocent, trusting prayer. The child wasn't praying because she understood the mechanics of brake failure or the physics of high-speed crashes. She was praying because she believed, with the absolute certainty that only children possess, that God was listening and would answer. 40 seconds to the curve, Débora could see the exact spot where they would break through the guardrail. She could visualize their car leaving the road, the sickening moment of weightlessness before they began tumbling down the rocky slope. She thought about her mother, who would have to identify their bodies. She thought about Anna's teacher, who would have to explain to the other children why their classmate wouldn't be coming back to school. "Please, God," Anna continued, her eyes squeezed shut in concentration. "I know Mommy works really hard to take care of sick people at the hospital, and I know she loves you even when she's worried about money and stuff. She's the best mommy in the whole world, and I don't want anything bad to happen to her." 30 seconds. The curve loomed ahead like a judgment. Débora found herself whispering along with her daughter's prayer, her lips moving silently as Anna's voice filled the car. Despite her terror, she felt a strange sense of peace settling over her. If these were to be their final moments, at least they would spend them in prayer, together. 20 seconds. Débora could see every detail of the approaching guardrail, could count the metal posts that held it in place. She noticed wildflowers growing along the roadside, their bright yellow petals dancing in the morning breeze. Strange how she had never noticed them before in all her trips along this road. "And God," Anna said, her voice taking on a tone of absolute authority that seemed impossible from such a small child, "I know you can make our car stop. I believe you will make our car stop. Please make our car stop right now. In Jesus' name, amen." 15 seconds. Débora closed her eyes for just a moment, unable to watch their approach to certain death. When she opened them, expecting to see the guardrail filling her windshield. Something impossible was happening. The car was slowing down. Not gradually, not the way a car slows when brakes are applied or when a driver lifts their foot from the accelerator. It was slowing as if invisible hands had reached out from heaven and simply grasped their speeding vehicle, bringing it under control with supernatural gentleness. The speedometer needle dropped from 65 to 55 to 45 miles per hour in the span of just a few seconds. There was no grinding of brakes, no change in engine noise, no mechanical explanation for what was occurring. The car simply began to obey a power greater than gravity or momentum. Débora felt the steering wheel become light and responsive in her hands. The heavy, sluggish feeling that had made the car difficult to control at high speed disappeared completely. She guided them into the curve as smoothly as if she had been driving at the posted speed limit all along, 35 miles per hour, 25 miles per hour. As they completed the turn and began traveling along the straightaway on the other side, their speed continued to decrease until they were moving at exactly 15 miles per hour. Then, as gently as a mother placing a sleeping baby in a crib, their car came to a complete stop in the middle of the road. For several long moments, neither mother nor daughter spoke. The engine was still running, but everything else was perfectly quiet. No wind noise, no tire noise, no sound except the gentle idle of their Honda's four-cylinder engine. Debora's hands shook as she turned off the ignition, and the silence became complete. "Mommy!" Anna's voice came from the back seat, soft and wondering. "Did you feel that?" "Feel what, sweetheart?" Débora whispered, afraid to speak too loudly in case she broke whatever spell had just saved their lives. "It felt like someone was hugging our car," Anna said. "Like when you hug me really tight to make me feel safe. Someone was hugging our car and making it slow down." Débora turned around to look at her daughter, who was still kneeling on the seat, but no longer in prayer position. The little girl's face was radiant, glowing with a joy and wonder that seemed to light up the entire interior of the car. "Anna, do you understand what just happened?" Débora asked. Anna nodded seriously. "God answered my prayer, Mommy. I asked him to make our car stop, and he did. He always listens when we really need him." Within minutes, other vehicles began arriving at the scene. The truck driver who had been following them pulled over, his face pale with shock. A middle-aged man in work clothes jumped down from the cab and approached their car with shaking hands. "Ma'am, I saw the whole thing," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "I've been driving trucks for 25 years, and I've never seen anything like what just happened. You were doing at least 65 when you hit that curve, maybe 70. I was already reaching for my radio to call for emergency services because I knew there was no way you could make that turn." The truck driver paused, wiping sweat from his forehead despite the cool morning air. "But then your car just slowed down all by itself. I didn't see any brake lights. I didn't see any reason for it. Your car just gradually slowed down and went around that curve like you were out for a Sunday drive. How did you do that?" Before Débora could answer, another vehicle pulled over. A woman in a blue SUV got out and walked toward them, her face filled with amazement and confusion. "I was coming from the other direction," the woman said. "I saw your car approaching the curve way too fast, and I closed my eyes because I couldn't bear to watch what I thought was going to be a terrible accident. But when I opened them, you were just driving around the turn normally. I don't understand what happened." More vehicles stopped. Within 10 minutes, there were half a dozen cars and trucks parked along the roadside, their drivers and passengers, all wanting to know how a runaway car with no brakes had somehow managed to navigate one of the most dangerous curves in the county. Débora had no answer for them. She had no answer for the police officer who arrived 20 minutes later, or for the tow truck driver who was called to transport their disabled vehicle. When the mechanic at Miguel's auto shop examined the car later that afternoon, his diagnosis was clear and terrifying: complete brake system failure. The brake lines had ruptured, all brake fluid was gone, and there was absolutely no mechanical means by which the car should have been able to slow down or stop. "Mrs. Martinez," Miguel said, shaking his head in bewilderment. "I've been working on cars for 30 years, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that this vehicle had no functioning brake system whatsoever. Whatever stopped your car on that mountain road, it wasn't the brakes." Word of the miracle spread quickly through Cedar Falls. It was the kind of small town where everyone knew everyone else, and extraordinary events became community conversations within hours. People who had known Débora and Anna for years came to hear their account firsthand. Some were skeptical, suggesting there must be some logical explanation that hadn't been discovered yet. Maybe there had been a mechanical problem that corrected itself, or maybe the witnesses had misunderstood what they had seen. Others nodded knowingly, sharing their own stories of answered prayers and divine interventions. Dr. Patricia Wells, a physics professor from the State University, who happened to be visiting relatives in Cedar Falls, heard about the incident and asked to examine the car and interview the witnesses. She spent 3 days studying the brake system, calculating the speed and momentum involved, and reviewing the statements of everyone who had witnessed the event. Her conclusion was both scientific and profound. Based on the laws of physics and the documented condition of the vehicle, what these multiple witnesses describe should have been impossible. A car traveling at 65 miles per hour down a steep grade with no functioning brake system cannot simply slow down and stop without some external force acting upon it. I have no scientific explanation for what occurred, but Dr. Wells wasn't finished with her analysis. However, she continued, the absence of a scientific explanation doesn't mean the event didn't happen. We have multiple credible witnesses, physical evidence of brake system failure, and a documented outcome that defies conventional physics. Sometimes, science simply has to acknowledge that there are forces at work in the universe that we don't yet understand. Anna returned to school the following week and continued preparing for her role as an angel in the Christmas play. When her classmates asked about the accident they had heard their parents discussing, she would simply say, "God saved us because I asked him to. He always helps us when we really need it." Her teacher, Mrs. Davidson, was struck by the child's matter-of-fact attitude about what adults considered a miraculous event. Anna talks about it the same way she talks about getting help with her math homework, Mrs. Davidson observed. To her, it's just another example of how God takes care of people who ask for his help. The story spread beyond Cedar Falls, picked up first by the local newspaper, then by regional television stations, and eventually by national news outlets. Reporters came to interview Débora and Anna, asking how it felt to experience a miracle, whether their faith had changed as a result of the experience, and what message they wanted to share with others. Anna's response was always the same. God loves everyone and he wants to help us. We just have to ask him and believe he will do it. Sometimes grown-ups make it more complicated than it needs to be. Débora found herself changed by the experience in ways she hadn't expected. The financial worries that had kept her awake at night seemed less overwhelming. The daily stresses of single parenthood felt more manageable. She had witnessed something that couldn't be explained by logic or science, something that had saved their lives through the pure, innocent faith of her 7-year-old daughter. "I always believed in God," she told one interviewer, "but I suppose my faith had conditions. I believed God could help with some things under certain circumstances, if I was good enough or if I prayed hard enough." Anna's faith doesn't have conditions. She just believes completely and absolutely that God is there and will help when we need him. The Christmas play at Riverside Elementary took on special significance that year. When Anna appeared on stage in her white dress and cardboard wings, speaking her lines in her clear, strong voice, the entire audience was reminded of the real angel who had knelt in the back seat of a runaway car and called upon heaven for help. "Fear not," Anna said in her role as the angel announcing Jesus' birth, "for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy." The words took on additional meaning for everyone who knew her story. She had indeed brought good tidings, proof that faith could still move mountains and stop speeding cars. Years passed and the incident on Mountain View Road became part of local legend. The curve where the miracle occurred was unofficially renamed Angel's Turn by area residents. A small memorial marker was placed there by the county, not to commemorate a tragedy, but to remember a miracle. When Anna was old enough to fully understand how close they had come to death that day, her perspective remained unchanged. "God was there," she would say with the same certainty she had shown as a 7-year-old. "He's always there. We just have to believe and ask for help." The car was eventually repaired, but Débora kept a small photo of Angel's Turn on her dashboard, not as a good luck charm, but as a reminder that faith, especially the uncomplicated, trusting faith of a child, could change the impossible into the inevitable. Anna grew up to become a pediatric nurse, following in her mother's footsteps, but specializing in children's care. She often told her young patients and their worried parents about the day she prayed in the back seat of a runaway car, and God answered with a miracle. Some believed immediately, others remained skeptical, but all were touched by the sincerity and joy with which she shared her story. "Faith isn't complicated," she would tell them. "It's just talking to God like he's your best friend, and believing he'll help you. Children understand this naturally. It's grown-ups who make it difficult. The mountain road still winds through the Colorado foothills, and Angel's Turn still requires drivers to slow down and navigate carefully. But for one mother and daughter, that dangerous curve became something else entirely, a place where they learned that sometimes, when human solutions fail and hope seems lost, the faith of a child can change everything. The brake failure that should have killed them became the miracle that saved them. The prayer of a 7-year-old girl, spoken with absolute trust and innocent belief, had somehow commanded the laws of physics to step aside and allow divine intervention to take control of their runaway car. And somewhere in Colorado, on quiet Tuesday mornings when the light hits the mountain road just right, local residents still talk about the day when a little girl's prayer stopped a speeding car and saved 2 lives. It's become more than just a story. It's become a testament to the power of believing, even when everything seems impossible. The message of Anna's miracle extends far beyond that moment of terror on a mountain road. It speaks to the pure, unquestioning faith that children possess naturally, the kind of faith that doesn't negotiate with God or set conditions on belief. It reminds us that sometimes the most powerful prayers come from the smallest voices, and that miracles still happen for those who believe they will. If this story touched your heart and renewed your faith, please subscribe to our channel and comment with the word miracle so we know you stayed until the end. We promise to give a heart to every comment because stories like Anna's deserve to be shared with the world. Faith truly can move mountains and stop speeding cars.